Hi, it's Belle here, and welcome back to another episode of Talking High Performance with Belle. And today's episode is one I've been bursting to record because whether I'm coaching an athlete, a team leader, a parent, or even a business owner, there's one thing that always comes up. And that one thing is mindset. What is the mindset that we have around things going on in our lives? And it's not just the think positive fluff that you always hear about. I mean the real kind, the kind that shows up when things go wrong. How do you react? That kind that keeps you steady when life throws a curveball that you weren't expecting. The kind that fuels your performance before anything external even changes. And that's what I'm going to spend the next bit of time talking to you about today. And I want to unpack this with you because ultimately your mindset, whether it's in life, in sport, and in leadership, it doesn't just influence how you show up. It also influences how you feel and it determines your results. And I want to break that down with you today. So if we talk about mindset in life, you're not behind, you're building. And quite often this is where people start to feel down. And so many people I coach come to me initially feeling stuck with some part of their life and feeling like they're falling behind, whether it's behind in business, behind in parenting, behind in life, or even behind in sport. But what if that belief is the very thing that's keeping you stuck? The belief that you're falling behind. So here's a question I'd love you to ask yourself today. Are you measuring your worth based on a timeline or by your actual truth? Because when you measure it by your truth, you find that you're not behind, you're building. Maybe you're in a season of foundation. Maybe you're planting seeds. Maybe you're in a season of clarity or of healing. Maybe your growth might not look flashy right now, but things are happening in the background and traction's starting to build, even if you can't see it yet. And one of my high-level executive clients recently told me, I feel like I'm not achieving enough this quarter. But when we in fact unpack that and look closer, she had finally started setting boundaries that she'd been working on. She'd started saying no so she wasn't as burnt out. And she was having more time or spending more time with her kids. And so even though she didn't feel like she had the results this quarter, that in itself was growth, and that was massive. And that's high performance. Even if the scoreboard doesn't reflect it yet, it's what are the steps that you're putting in the background that can help you. So instead of her saying, I should be further ahead, or instead of yourself saying, I should be further ahead, ask yourself, what are you building right now that actually matters? And more than that, what stage of the journey are you in? If we talk about mindset in sport, this is a big one. And this is all around playing to win, not to avoid losing. So when I work with athletes, and I see this also in my kids come up at times, and also myself growing up playing sport, a player gets in their head. Doesn't matter what sport they're playing. They start overthinking every move, every shot, every kick, and suddenly their performance tanks. Or it's not as good as what it was, or it's not as good as what it was in training. And that's normal. But what happens is then they don't play to win. They don't go out with their game plan. They play not to lose. And there's a subtle difference, but it's really powerful. And that mindset to play small, to play on the other person's conditions, to avoid mistakes, and to play safe, it creeps in everywhere in our life. So it creeps in not just on the court, but in other areas. It could be hesitating to launch a business, not speaking up in a meeting. It could be holding back from going all in on the thing that you want because you're scared of how it might look if you fail or what others might think of you. But when you play to win, not to lose, your energy, it begins to shift. And why does that happen? It happens because you're being bolder, you're being more courageous, you're being more focused, and you're clear. You're clear in how you want to show up. And even then when you make mistakes, you bounce back quicker because your mindset is different. So when we think about high performers, they don't fear failure. They train for it because they know that the lesson is part of the win. That failure is part of getting them closer to winning. So whether you're a parent on the sideline or a CEO running the show, ask yourself, are you playing to win on your terms, or are you playing it safe? So that's a really big one. Another area is mindset in leadership. So responding instead of reacting. So there's two different things. So if we talk about this in leadership, one of my favorite topics is leadership, and it's about not being the smartest in the room. It's about the energy, the influence, and the intelligence, the emotional intelligence that you bring to situations. And that starts with your mindset. So how you think shapes how you lead, which shapes how your team behaves. And this is especially clear when things get messy. So I remember coaching a leader who told me they just keep snapping at their team and they hate it because that's not the person they are. They said away from that role. But in fact, when we peeled back the layers, his nervous system was on high alert due to all the pressure that he was under. So he had no time between what was happening and his response. He just had a reaction, and then another reaction, and then another reaction. And so all of the time he felt like he was snapping. So he worked on one mindset shift, which was responding instead of reacting. And it took time, definitely, but it changes everything because he started practicing to pause. So instead of snapping, he'd just stop. He'd take a breath, he'd go for a 5-minute walk, he'd have a glass of water, and he'd begin to choose being curious over controlling the situation. And then you start to hit a new level, which is called mindset mastery. Your team doesn't want a perfect leader. They need one that's grounded, one that's real, and one that's willing to learn and adapt. So if you're struggling with this in leadership, here's a test, or here's a tip. Next time you feel triggered, ask, what would the leader that you admire the most do in this moment? And try and lean into that instead of reacting. And even for myself, this is a work in progress. If we talk about mindset in identity, you're not just what you achieve. So this is a big one I see as well in high performers. We attach our identity to what we've achieved. So if we feel like we're not achieving at the moment, we don't feel like we have a great identity. So if we're not winning, we feel like we're not worthy. Or if we're not producing, we might feel like we're not valuable. Or if we're not achieving something, we feel like it doesn't matter what we're doing. And this is another really big mindset trap that we often fall into. So you are not just what you achieve, which is what quite often we attach our worth to. You are who you are becoming, who you are intentionally becoming. And here's what I know and what I've worked out over the years. If you strip away the titles, the scoreboard, the goals, the strongest people are the ones that know their worth without the trophy in their hand, whatever the trophy looks like to you. So they're the ones that keep showing up with integrity. They don't collapse after the loss. They're not bad sports. They lead with that inner strength instead of the external validation from others, because they have a strong mindset that regardless of the result, they are validated within themselves. So who are you when no one's watching? And who do you want to be regardless of the result? And once you know that, it's easier to build that version, because that version is the unstoppable version of you. That version is the authentic version of you. What about mindset in recovery? And this is one that I've really had to learn over the years, that slow is still a speed. So this one's for the moments in between doing things, in between seasons of rest, of burnout, of injury, of heartbreak, in between really big projects at work. And most people want to rush to get through things, or they want to rush through the rest period. And they want to bounce back, or they want to hustle harder, or they want to get over it, or they want to get over that relationship. But recovery, whether it's physical, spiritual, mental, emotional, it's a big part of high performance, and slow is still a speed. And if we avoid the slow part, we will never go as fast as what we can. So if you're tired, it doesn't mean you're failing. It means that you're actually a human. And I had to get my head around this a little bit for myself. So you don't need to power through everything. You don't need to be working at 100, kilometers an hour every day, every moment. Sometimes the most powerful thing that you can actually do is pause to reflect, reset, and rebuild. And then you come back in from a more intentional place because you're clearer. So when you're coming off a big win or a rough loss, ask yourself, what do I need right now to help me recover well and rise stronger afterwards? Because the mindset that you bring to recovery and how you approach it, and recognizing that slow is still a speed, it determines how you'll rise when you return. And that's a really, really big one. Now I want to talk about mindset in the moment. So what you practice is what you perform. So you always hear people say that mindset isn't built in the spotlight, or heroes aren't built in the spotlight. They're built in the quiet moments, in the moments where no one's watching, in the moments where quite often you don't feel like doing the thing. So it's built when you choose courage over comfort, or when you choose to pause over panic, or when you choose progress over perfection, or when you choose to stay quiet instead of reacting. This is where it's born, because when you do this, you're beginning to wire your brain for greatness, because you're beginning to change patterns. So ask yourself today, what mindset do you find yourself rehearsing? Or what energy are you bringing into the room? Is that the energy you want to bring? Or am I training the version of me I want to become? Or am I playing to lose? And this is the work that needs to be done that moves everything forward and gets you feeling much better about your life and much clearer in your intentions. So it doesn't matter whether you're building a business, running a house, chasing a dream, or even leading a team. The mindset that you bring, that's your edge. That's what differentiates you from everybody else. And it's the part most people overlook because it takes work to control it, but it's the part that changes everything. And it's the hardest skill to master, but once you do it, your life will feel different. So remember, in your life, you're not behind, you're building. In sport, play to win, not just to avoid the loss. In leadership, pause, breathe, and respond with intention. When it comes to your identity, you're not just your results, you're your values. And when it comes to recovery, the biggest one I've learned, slow is still a speed, even if it doesn't feel like it. And in practice, repetition wires the reality that you begin to lean into. So if today's episode spoke to you, share it, send it to someone who needs to hear it. And if you haven't already subscribed to the podcast or my YouTube channel, go and do that now so that you'll be the first to know when one of my episodes drop, because I regularly drop new episodes with tools, strategies, and things to keep your mindset sharp and your energy high. So until next time, live a successful, purposeful, and fully charged life. Your coach, Belle. Are you feeling overwhelmed trying to balance work and life? If you're finding it hard to excel in these areas, it may be time for a change. The Elevate with Belle membership offers a practical solution designed to help you regain control and achieve your goals. With this membership, you'll join a community of ambitious individuals committed to real results. Twice a month, you can participate in live sessions where you'll receive actionable strategies and insights to boost your productivity and work-life balance. And if you can't attend live, all the sessions will be recorded for your convenience. You'll also have opportunities to engage with guest experts and attend exclusive events throughout the year. If you're struggling with productivity, you can learn some effective time management techniques. If you're feeling burnt out, you can get some strategies for better work-life integration. And if you're lacking energy, I can help you with tools to help you stay motivated and inspired throughout the day. And this is just an example of some of the things we'll be covering. So if you're ready to make a change, then join the Elevate with Belle membership today and let's start achieving the results you've been aiming for.